Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. We have got so much to talk about. Oh, my goodness. Did you know that a fifth of Americans cannot read? Did you know that? We'll be talking about that in the third hour. In the second hour, Alcatraz. Do you remember the movie Escape from Alcatraz? Well, it seems like we're trying to reopen it. Is that cruel and unusual punishment? And all of this up against the backdrop of censorship. I was at a town hall meeting of Congressman Jonathan Jackson, fully disclosed, that's my brother. And he was talking about the banned words in government now. The government has banned words, words that are disadvantaging businesses of people of color, but particularly Black people. Yeah, it's amazing. We're banning books, we're banning words, and we're arresting people for their points of view, and we're defunding of all things, we're defunding NPR and PBS. That at least is the executive order that the president has issued. An executive order to, PBS, NPR, Sesame Street, Zoom, Ken Burns, American Masters. Oh, please, I can tell you much of their programming comes from the BBC. What are they saying? What does this mean? Let's think about that, everybody. Let's think about that. Because it is a very, very real thing, a very real thing. And what does that mean? What does that mean? They're calling it ending taxpayer subsidization of biased media by the authority vested in me as President of the United States, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. I hereby order the National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service receive taxpayer funds through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Unlike in 1967, when this Corporation for Public Broadcasting was established, today the media landscape is filled with abundant, diverse, and innovative news options. Government funding of news media in this environment is not only outdated and unnecessary, but corrosive to the appearance of journalistic independence. It's really loaded. What would you do without NPR and PBS? Those of us who are fans and who take in all of the information that they give us, you hear their fundraising drives. They work very hard to give us a diverse range of opinions and stories that you don't hear about. But somehow or another, they are going to lose a substantial portion of their funding. And when they do, guess what's going to happen? The local affiliates are going to feel that first. Some of the best local reporting, some of the best local programming, NPR, PBS, whether it's music, culture, politics, they cover it all. And that's happening amidst all of this censorship. So let's talk about it. With Jim Narakis of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Jim, whenever these stories come up, I always come to you. When you see that my number coming up, you're like, okay, Santita, here we go. Well, it's because I know the history of fairness and accuracy in reporting. I know the work that you and Janine Jackson have continued to do, you and your team, down through the years. And it means so much because you really help us. You help me to frame stories properly. You said, wait a minute, it's not mainstream media, because we're all mainstream. We are. But they're corporate sponsored media. And when you say that, it's like, wait, independent media means that I can independently open up the doors to different trains of thought. When you look at corporate media, you hear the same opinions from two different sides, really, one different side with two different cultural perspectives over and over and over again. So let's talk about this. What about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? What about NPR? What about PBS? We've not always had them, everybody. And I think it's important for us to understand that, Jim Narakis, that we've not always had them and what the world looked like before we were able to have something like that. So I don't know where to begin. Let's start with PBS and NPR.
I just wanted to comment on the executive order that you just read. The words that jump out at me are the authority vested in me, which it's not. He has no authority to do this under the laws of the United States or under the Constitution of the United States. He has no authority to tell CPB what to do, to tell CPB that they can't fund PBS and NPR. Congress has given money to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was set up as an independent entity specifically so that the government could not dictate what is biased coverage or what is fair coverage. The Congress did not trust the White House, any White House, to be the arbiters of what is neutral journalism, because any government is going to have the assumption that journalism that criticizes them is not neutral. If you were neutral, you would love the president, right? And then, this president takes that to an extreme, a parody of the kind of self-centeredness that is inherent in chief executives. Anything that is not 100% MAGA is a bias to Donald Trump, and that's why he can't abide PBS or NPR, because they are, they strive to include different points of view that are, their purpose is to provide points of view that commercial outlets don't allow on. And FAIR has been very critical of public broadcasting over the years. I have to say.
And why? Why?
I think that the government has not respected the independence of CPB. Over decades, you've had criticism, mostly coming from the Republican Party, over supposed bias in public broadcasting. And when they give examples, it's always like they find a rare example of a perspective that you would not find on commercial TV, which is really the reason for being of public broadcasting. It's set up because there are things that corporate sponsors are not going to underwrite. They're not going to give you money to put on the air criticism of the corporate state. That is not something that they, and that is what explicitly public broadcasting was set up to do. And over the years, these cries of bias, like the cries you're hearing from Donald Trump now, have been used to scare PBS away from doing programming that looks at labor history, for example. This is something that obviously corporate sponsors are not eager to have people talking about how workers have organized, and so you see very little of it on commercial television. And Congress in their hearings about is public broadcasting dangerously biased, tend to focus on that. Environmental programming, consumer protection, civil rights programming. These are things that you don't see a lot of on the commercial networks because they are not corporate friendly topics.
But Jim, they also give you a lot of programming that's very, if you don't mind, 60 minutes-ish or esque. Charles, yeah. I mean, just, oh my goodness, CBS Morning, Sunday morning. That really don't get, they let you know, like Hazel Scott, one of the greatest artists produced in modern times, someone who's almost been forgotten because of her politics, to tell her story. This is a Black woman who had a television show 70 years ago. Yeah. Someone who was too young to be admitted to Juilliard. So they said, we'll give you private tutorials at the age of 8. That's good for all Americans.
Yeah.
For everybody. It's good to know about Picasso. You need to know about John Brown. You need to know about George Washington. You need to know the full story of Thomas Jefferson. You need to know the impact that baseball and jazz and country and rhythm and blues and all of the things that we've produced have had upon us. Were it not for PBS or NPR, these are stories that would be relegated to the trash heap of history, not to the forefront of it.
Yeah.
So what is the problem? Because you're right. You have fairness and accuracy in reporting. You haven't attacked PBS. What you have done is push them to be true to their mission. You're like, wait a minute now. What you should have asked was this other question. Because the question that you asked inclined us in this direction. But if you ask this question, we get a fuller sense. You've just pushed them. You've not been anti-PBS. You've not been anti-PBR. And quite frankly, the very mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like what PBS and NPR, public broadcasting in general, need is more insulation from government pressure. It would be great for them to have a dedicated revenue stream, like the BBC does in Britain, where the license fee from buying a television goes directly to the BBC, and they don't have to. The BBC, I think it's difficult to get public programming that is truly insulated from government pressure. But that is what they should be striving for. Too often when they've been called in front of congressional hearings, instead of saying, listen, this is not appropriate, we're supposed to be independent of the government, we're not supposed to be doing government propaganda. Instead, they're like, oh no, we have lots of conservative programming on, and try to mollify, which, these are the people who are writing the checks. And so it's human nature that you are going to try to mollify them, and not rock the boat, that is, not bite the hand that's feeding you. But public broadcasting ought to be able to bite the hand of the government, because you need to be able to have open criticism of the government on a network that is designed to showcase the full range of opinion and ideas.
Well, then let's go back to the founders of the Republic, who encoded in our founding documents the protection of the press.
Right.
It's the only profession that is protected in the Constitution. Why is that? Why?
The idea is that the press is given freedom because that will help protect all the other freedoms. You have the press given this power, this independence from government, so that they are able to point out when the government is trampling on liberties. And that was something that the founders were very concerned about. And I think it's important to remember that the press that existed at the time that freedom of the press was guaranteed in the Constitution was not a neutral press. It was not an objective press. It was a partisan press, where a paper would represent a particular point of view, and argue it very strenuously, and would attack politicians that disagreed with them, would support the politicians that agreed with them.
They were more like rag sheets, right? They were almost like, if you watch Bridgerton, they were like Whistledown, really, because was it J.T. Callender, who had been one of Thomas Jefferson's best friends? He was the one who outed his relationship with Sally Hemings, Dusky Sally, because he became angry with him because he wasn't appointed postmaster or something like that, postmaster general. And so he decided to take his newspaper, which everybody in Washington read, and he talked about Dusky Sally, who was living in the White House with Thomas Jefferson, and it became such a hot story. It was such a scandal that they had to send her back to Monticello. I mean that's just like an example, right, of what they were doing at the time,
Right.
and it's almost as if it's almost like Fleet Street. I'm sorry, in London, there are no guardrails. There were no guardrails, right?
Yeah. And so when the press is being attacked for being biased and for not being neutral, when PBS is being attacked, that is not, you are not required to have no point of view, no perspective, in order to have the protection of the First Amendment. That is not what the First Amendment. The First Amendment is not for people who don't have ideas. It's not for people who don't have an ideology. It protects your right to have an ideology, to have opinions, to have a vision that you want to see the country have.
Mhm.
When you're talking about public media, obviously you want a diverse range of views. They're supposed to public media is supposed to represent a broader range of perspectives than commercial media can, and you can't get that if anytime you see something that you disagree with on PBS, you say this is biased. Why are taxpayers subsidizing this? Taxpayers are subsidizing this because we have a healthy democracy when you have a full range of views represented in the public discussion, when people are not afraid to say what they think. And I feel like I really am afraid that we're losing that in this country. Like the attitude towards the First Amendment from the Trump administration is so perverse, is so anti what the First Amendment is really about, that I worry that we're doing real damage to what this country is about.
But wait a minute, but can't you at least what our stated principles? Because I'm wondering, because I think the corporate media does that. They don't give us the full story. They don't investigate. They call everybody who questions the government narrative a conspiracy theorist. They don't investigate. They're not asking where are the rest of the files on JFK, RFK, and MLK. They don't. You cannot really, when you go to corporate media, Jim Narakis, you cannot no one at this point really expects to find the truth. No one. Now, those people from the civil rights movement knew that the corporate media were used to bend the narrative, right? I mean, they made Dr. King public enemy number one, which helped to soften it helped to create the environment for his assassination. I mean, that is absolutely point blank what they did. And they do that. So I'm just wondering if we give them too much credit. Lisa Bafundo says, we need NPR and PBS, and this kind of and the kind of programming that they have, so that we don't have another 1930s Germany. I'm saying you don't have to go to Germany. Stay right here in the United States, with all due respect, because we have had slavery here. We have had sweatshops here. We've not only stolen indigenous people's lands, we've never, ever upheld a treaty. They don't talk about that. They really don't. And I think, to get to the other side, in order for us to get to the other side, we have to go through this. We have to be honest, Jim, about who we really are.
Absolutely.
Who we have been, right?
Yeah. Being a media activist is similar to being a civil rights activist, in that you are fighting. You're fighting for what America is supposed to be, not what America was. You're not looking to a golden age of when things were perfect, and we just need to turn back the clock to that time. It is an ideal that we are fighting for, where all ideas get to get out there and be argued with, and that people can expose whatever is going wrong in our country, in our government, without fear of retribution from the state. And we are, rather than moving towards that ideal and trying to fix the flaws that we have in our media system, we really are turning back the clock to a time when people were afraid to criticize the government because the government could bring retribution on you. You know, the idea of suing newspapers because you don't like their coverage of you, you don't like the polls that they did. You know,
what is that?
That, you know, 10 years ago, that would have seemed crazy for the president to be saying, I'm going to sue the Des Moines Register.
No, you're fired.
But now it's Tuesday, you know.
but what I'm trying to figure out what the thinking is, because I don't see nor do I hear enough criticism. I've seen Elon Musk buy X, and he manipulates your algorithms if he disagrees with you, and no one's saying anything.
Last year I read a book called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber. And
The Dawn of Everything.
Yeah, it's kind of a survey of history and a view of history by an anarchist philosopher. And one of the points that he makes that was really eye-opening for me is talking about how the idea of liberty in Western culture derives from the Roman idea of libertas, which was the state of being a patriarch, of being the head of a household that involved basically that you had the status of a slave owner rather than an enslaved person, and that the definition of liberty that Western culture has drawn on is based on having rights that have been taken away from other people and given to you. You know, you are free because you are not unfree, and that your freedom depends on someone else's unfreedom. And when you understand it this way, that freedom is the sort of subtext of it is that this belongs to some people and not to other people, then it makes a lot more sense. It's like stand your ground laws. Stand your ground laws don't make any sense unless you think some people are chosen in advance as being the one who get to stand their ground and other people have to back down. You know, like if that rule applies to everyone, then you're just going to have like shootouts in the street, right?
And nobody will be alive.
Right. So the assumption behind stand your ground is that there's good guys who get to stand their ground and bad guys who get to be shot, and it's okay. And that is how the right looks at freedom of speech, that it belongs to some people and not to other people.
But who does it belong to? Who is allowed to speak freely?
Well, the right is, you know, the people who have the right ideas, according to the right. They are the ones who get to speak freely. And this is it's an idea that the right has embraced to real damaging effect. But it's an idea that we've seen growing among the sort of centrist establishment, among places like the New York Times and the Atlantic, have been promoting the idea for the past, 10 years, 20 years or so, of saying that the big threat to speech is other people's speech. People often refer to this as cancel culture. Mm-hmm. You know, the idea that what is really holding people back from being able to speak freely is that other people might criticize them. And so you're not really free to speak unless other people aren't free to speak critically of you. and they don't spell it out like this, but that is the implication. That other people's speech is the problem with free speech, and once you frame the question that way, then the answer to how you preserve free speech is to silence people.
What will happen if, as he says, I therefore instruct the CPB board of directors and all executive departments and agencies to cease federal funding for NPR and PBS? And of course, that is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? As I'm reading about it, they're saying that these local PBS stations will be hit first and hardest.
Well, I feel that we've seen way too much compliance going on from when people are hit with these dictatorial decrees from Donald Trump. Too many people are saying, yes, sir, how high? And in this case, CPB did not. I appreciated CPB's response, which is that we are not a government agency. We are an independent entity. We were set up by Congress to be independent of the government and not to be under the direction of the executive branch. And therefore, your executive order does not apply to us, and we don't have to do what you say. And so I don't think the executive order will have any impact directly.
So what will they do? Do they go back to? I mean, is this now Congress's call?
Yeah, the CBB has money, and under a separate, not the executive order, but under a separate measure, the White House is trying to take back money that was given by Congress to CPB, and that is the more serious threat, and that is up to Congress to say no. You have to actually. We said that this money was going to CPB, and that's where the money is going to go. But CPB itself is not inclined to listen to the directives of Donald Trump and obey what he is dictating.
Well, it seems to me that there is the right wing wants to privatize Social Security. They've already privatized healthcare. That is a disaster. They want to privatize the post office. I mean, are they trying to eliminate this public broadcasting, or are they trying to seize it as, look, social media, for the most part, is a captive of these oligarchs. And it always was, but now it is just, they really, there's nothing that's free and open on the internet now. I mean, we've been moving in this direction for some time, but it seems like we're going, full tilt into this. And so my point is, what do you believe is the long game that they're playing? Because these people, they play chess, not checkers. There's something, and I need to know from you. What do you think? What is the end game for them with NPR, with PBS? Because of course, this has an impact on independent media, because it is harder for independent media to get sponsorships. It's all very Project
2025, which is the blueprint to the extent that there is one for the second Trump administration, they're very explicit in wanting to get rid of PBS and NPR entirely. They do not want media outlets that are not part of the corporate media system at all. They think it's a danger to the conservative movement to have media that is not under the commercial media model. I think over in the past, I feel like a lot of the complaints about public broadcasting have been sort of tactical, because if you point at PBS and say, you have left-wing bias, you can get them to put on more shows that are conservative, and have more of a platform for right-wing ideas. I don't think that is what the Trump administration, I think, is different from previous Republican administrations in that they have much more of a burn it down attitude. They send Elon Musk, in with his Doge crew, because they don't care if they break government. They would prefer a broken government to a government that functions.
So that they can take their pieces of it and control.
Yeah. And you discredit the idea, like if government becomes more dysfunctional, and people are more frustrated by it, that discredits the idea of government, which is to them a win-win.
So what should we be doing now? Should we be calling our representatives to say, look, make sure that you do fund PBS and NPR? Because I think this is an opportunity for the American public to really flex our muscle and let them know, let the far right, let the oligarchs, if you will, whoever they are, whether they're on the left or the right, to let them know who's really in charge here. Because oftentimes I don't think that Americans really believe that we're as powerful as we are, that things really kind of course along as they do because we've not seized the reins, Jim. Because this form of government, a republic, not a democracy, because our founding fathers, I'm not convinced, really believed in that. I mean, they felt that was mob rule. If you just really read what they wrote about this, they said, no, you can have democratic elements, but I don't really trust the people that much, not the great unwashed. So if you don't have property, you cannot vote.
The first presidents
and be a white male.
The first, I forget, 6 or 8 presidents, none of them got more than 4% of the population voting for them.
Yes.
Because the franchise was so limited to not just white men, but white men who owned significant property.
Yes.
So a tiny, so that these famous presidents that end up on the money, most of them got a tiny, 1 in 50 people voted for them to make them president.
Absolutely. And so, so with that, since, and we have been evolving ever since, and I think that we have to really understand that. That's why I keep going back. And for, people of our age, we cannot imagine not having had PBS and NPR, but our parents are like, no, you all don't know how much you have had. I mean, to have Sesame Street, a show that was multiracial based upon a few blocks in Harlem. What? With talking animals and on and on. I mean, really, I don't think we understand how fortunate we have been. Our lives have been very, very different. They've been enriched. When I think of the Electric Company and Zoom and Master Theater and I mean, and I don't know how they object to it because so much of the programming on PBS is British. I mean, think about it. It's like, please, I'm like in London right now. I mean, on the weekend especially, I'm like, oh, are you serious? So, I mean, so I'm trying to find out what it is. What do I mean? And where do we go now? Because we are amidst a heavily censored moment. When they keep talking about the and the corporate media are in on this. They're talking about these mass deportations. Jim, that they've not had mass deportations of these migrants. They're deporting these students who support Palestine.
Right.
Those are the mass deportations. Those are the people who are being hunted down on the street. But they don't tell you any of that. We've got all of this censorship. And they're shutting, you can't speak freely on X. Increasingly, where can we speak freely?
I feel like we really need to build our own alternative media. I think that has always been the answer to what is to be done about the problem of undemocratic media, is to build our own media. And I feel like in the social media sphere, we have some promising projects right now that I think need more buy-in, more support. Things like Mastodon and Blue Sky.
Mm-hmm.
That people need to be moving off of a platform that is controlled by a right-wing billionaire, onto something that has more democratic control and more openness. At the same time, I think that we need to be pushing on corporate media to wake up to the fact that they are under the gun. Their pretense of neutrality is not going to save them from the attempt by the Trump administration to control them. Mm-hmm. They are their basic approach is on the one hand, on the other hand. That is the journalistic model that corporate media embraces. And those hands are always carefully chosen, which hands those are.
Oh, yes.
But the MAGA is not satisfied with that. They would like their point of view to be the only hand.
But I don't know if it's just MAGA. I think really you're looking at the corporatists. They're not satisfied. I mean, and they're bigger than MAGA. I mean, I think we have to be careful about how we state this, because they've always been rapacious. They've always been so greedy, and they could never have enough. You can look at them and look at how they control the narrative in print, on television, on the radio. You don't really have small individual radio stations anymore. You have corporate radio, which means you can't get a lot of the songs that you want played anymore. That's over, right? A lot of the great artists, we're not going to hear them. I mean, this is a whole lot, and I'm trying to figure out, so where do we go from here? Because this is a time that it's like we're walking in a field loaded with landmines, Jim.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't know where to go. I mean, so that I don't get blown up.
Yeah, I do believe that we need to have a positive vision of a better world. I think that part of the reason why we have Donald Trump back again in the White House is because there was not enough of an alternative vision presented that addresses the real problems that we have in this country. I think of the Hillary Clinton slogan, "America is already great," which is, I think, a terrible slogan.
Why do you think it's terrible?
Because we have a serious problem of inequality in this country, with many people working very hard and accumulating very little, with people living in fear of getting sick because either they don't have health insurance, or if they do have health insurance, it's not adequate. It won't protect them from a serious illness. The people are if people want to go to college, most people have to take on really crippling debt to get through college. These are real problems that we have, and that in order to fix these problems, we really need to be willing to reorganize our society. To say we're not going to deliver healthcare through for-profit insurance companies anymore. That won't be the way we do it. The climate crisis is a genuine crisis where we're going to have more and more devastating disasters unless we stop running our economy on fossil fuels. That's just the reality.
But the only way I'm only going to hear about that, really, even if they're just scratching the surface, Jim, on PBS and NPR.
Yeah,
I hear points of view, and I'm sounding the alarm, everyone, because I think we ought to be alarmed.
Yeah,
because we don't know what we don't know. That to me is a very dangerous space to be in, Jim. I mean, we're not really covering what's happening in Pakistan. This is, I think, what is it, the 5th most populous nation on earth? They are on the verge of a nuclear conflict. We're not hearing about it, and we certainly don't hear about it from different sides.
Right.
And that to me is very, very. That's not to me. It's just dangerous.
Sure.
We've got Russia, and we're looking at a potential, an ongoing conflict with a nuclear power. I mean, and, we don't know about the stability and the integrity of the Ukrainian government. They've always been problematic. I mean, no one delves deeply. The only people who kind of scratch the surface, it's NPR, it's PBS, and certainly it's independent media. But I see them, and I'm not frightened by this. I think it's time for us to stand up and push back. We need to understand what's at stake here, Jim.
Yeah. As as limited the discussion is about the domestic policy choices that we have as a nation, I feel like overseas coverage is even more one-sided, univocal, with alternative perspectives just shut out of the discussion. And so much we of the world we view through the eyes of the State Department, because that's who the trusted sources are for corporate media.
But everybody's a stenographer now. It's just I don't see these crusading reporters anymore. It's like they've been shut down. Norman Solomon, I believe it was appealing for peace just before the Ukrainian conflict broke out. He was put in Facebook jail for 2 weeks. How can they hold on to this much power when they've not been good stewards of what to me is a public utility? And and that's what it ought to be. Yeah, but see, this is what I mean about the privatization. You've got public utilities that are privatized, and they have not stopped. They want to privatize everything.
Yeah.
And control our thoughts.
Yeah. The goal, the sort of ideology of the billionaires that are behind Trump is CEO government. The government should be. They say government should be run like a business, and when you hear that should frighten you, because and that is what Trump is trying to do is have a government where the boss gets to say, you're fired, essentially, and that's what he said to PBS and NPR. There's words he doesn't like, and those become the list of banned words. you know, um, it's all, Alcatraz needs to be reopened again so we can send people there. That image, that vision of a government where the government is boss and we are all the government's employees, serving at the pleasure of the government, is a terrifying one. It's really a dystopian vision of what the country is heading towards.
How do we support these independent media projects that can get out the truth? I mean, and what are they? How do you find them?
On fair.org, there's a list of independent outlets. It's certainly not exhaustive. There are many alternative media projects out there. They are, for the most part, nonprofit. Mostly they depend on the support of their audience. And I think people do need to recognize that if you want media that is going to be responsive to people like you, people like us need to support that media. We have been conditioned from commercial media and then from the internet. We have this idea that media is free, that the information that we get, no one pays for it. It just appears and shows up in our radio, on our television.
Oh, there's no time that goes into researching a topic.
And the fact is, it's not free. Someone's paying for it. And those people who are paying for it have an agenda. The corporate sponsors they're trying to sell you soap, yes, but they're also trying to sell you on a worldview that keeps the soap makers in the driver's seat of our society, and that comes through not just in the commercials, but in all the programming in between the commercials. So if you want media that is actually looking out for you, it's going to have to be media that is supported by people like you. And that means when you find a media outlet, a nonprofit media outlet that is covering the issues that you care about, that is presenting ideas that make sense to you, you need to help them out if you can. Not everyone has that privilege to be able to write a check. But if you do, it's an investment that is well worth it to support independent media.
Absolutely, because I think, and we need that now more than ever, because we need to understand not just the United States, but our world and our changing role in it. Because they've chosen the stories that we need to watch. But I think we have to put on our thinking caps and say, no, you know what? I want you to come into my neighborhood and I want you to take a train ride with me. I take trains a lot, whenever I can. I don't take them as often as I'd like. And when I go from Chicago to Detroit, or Chicago to Minneapolis, or Chicago to Washington, I see the deindustrialization of America. I do not hear any discussions about that unless I'm listening to and watching independent media. And it's really the people's voice. And we do have to really become the caretakers for that. But we also have to call out the people who own the media giants. And we have to demand that they behave responsibly with the power that's been vested in them, if you will. Borrow the language from this executive order, which, as you correctly pointed out, it is not law. It's not law. My brother says that all the time. He said, wait. An executive order is not the law. What they're doing now is using government power to frighten people and to and to really to stifle their livelihoods.
Right.
And that starts with being frightening people. In these last couple of minutes, what do you want us to know, and what should we do? Because this is very, very important, and I think we have an opportunity here, Jim, to get this right, and to really to I mean, just think, everybody think about what would happen if you remember when TV used to go off at 12 midnight. What if that happened to your PBS station and your NPR station? What if you didn't hear these interesting stories anymore? That's what could happen here. I mean, we're on track for that. It. I'm glad that they're fighting back. I'm glad that they're pushing back, but you've got to push with them. Jim Narakis.
Well, I would say that the everyone who's listening to us now has taken the first step, which is to seek out independent media, and find media that are talking about the real issues that are facing us. And I think that you are a wonderful example of that. And beyond finding alternative media, people need to support independent media. People need to share independent media with their friends, with their loved ones. We need to build horizontal communication, so that the information is not just top down. We need to find things that have proven to be trustworthy, and to make sure that those things have as big a voice as they can. And I will say that money is great, and very few media outlets can survive without the generosity. Independent media outlets can survive without the generosity of their audience. But for people who can't afford to support media financially, the support that people give on social media, in helping to spread the word, is really valuable. You know, the degree to which we are heard on social media is directly proportional to the number of people who are sharing our material, who are liking our material, who are commenting on our material. That is, you are genuinely helping in a very material way when you help spread our work on social media. The people need to be communicating with their representatives. I think that the attack on PBS and NPR is part of a broad-based attack by the Trump administration on, first of all, on any kind of media system that is not totally in lockstep with their MAGA point of view. But also it's part of a broader attack on the idea that Congress gets to decide where money is spent. You know, the people that we've elected to Congress under the Constitution are supposed to say where public funds are distributed, and Trump is, you know, trying to scuttle that principle by saying, you know, it doesn't matter that Congress voted money for public broadcasting. It doesn't matter that Congress voted money for foreign aid. It doesn't matter that Congress voted money for consumer protection. We're going to eliminate those things because I said so. And that is something that people need to be letting the representatives know that this is a crisis, that this is not something that democracy can't survive, that concentration of power in the hands of one individual, especially not an individual like Donald Trump. And so I think that message needs to be gotten out to our representatives through calling and emails and what have you, but also through people need to get on the streets and make our views known by getting together and using our freedom of assembly to promote the idea that we're not going to let this country become a dictatorship.
Well, and know that this is not a person, this is a movement. Because if you look at the people who President Trump has brought in, they're all very young. The vice president, is he 40? His press secretary is 27. Think about that, everybody. Or 25. 25, she's somewhere, but Caroline Levitt is somewhere between 25 and 27. These are young people. So, and be very clear, all of those people on the front row at his inauguration, they let you know how the country is really run. It's not by a person, it is by those persons and others that you do not see. But guess what? You're the one with the votes. You're the one with the votes. You're the one who make the difference. And I'm going to tell you something. That's why I believe in paper ballots, Jim. Tired of these machines can be hacked. I don't trust them. I don't care if it takes days to find out who won. I trust that. You need to take your vote back, everybody. Take your country. It's yours. Much love to you and the team at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Everybody support FAIR, support Extra. Let's talk about Alcatraz. Oh my gosh. What is going on? Oh, I mean, he's trying to reopen it, everybody. That's in the next hour coming up on the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.